I want to discuss today New York City's pilot program called Opportunity NYC Family Rewards. It was a pilot conditional cash transfer program inspired by Mexico's Oportunidades program back in 2007, as well as Bolsa Familia and other Latin American CCT programs. At that time, New York City officials under former Mayor Michael Bloomberg were intrigued by the idea of creating a conditional cash transfer program that might reduce immediate poverty while simultaneously building human capital to reduce longer-term and second-generation poverty. And more generally, city officials were intrigued by the idea of using financial incentives and what role they could play in an anti-poverty program. Now, conditionality is not new in the American social protection system. However, it's usually been tied to the conditions of work or looking for work. That was often the condition of receiving certain benefits. The CCT approach was different in that it represented a much more comprehensive approach, and in that sense, it was a more fundamental departure from the normal American safety net policy. And the idea was that perhaps by combining incentives across education and health and the workforce domains could produce a bigger effect on poverty reduction. My organization, MDRC, which is a nonprofit research organization, worked with the city to design a pilot CCT program. We looked at the literature on the experience of the Latin American programs and even visited the Mexican Oportunidades program. But the challenge here was very different because New York City, like the rest of the U.S., already has a substantially well-developed social safety net. So the CCT program here had to be layered on top of an existing safety net. It was something extra. Now, the design we came up with was much more comprehensive and complex than any other CCT program in the world. It had 22 different financial incentives in the areas of children's education, family preventive health care, and parents' employment. And it rewarded various activities that might be regarded as inputs, such as school attendance, but also outputs, such as achievement on standardized tests or employment outcomes. It was delivered by non-governmental organizations, and the resources were available, the cash transfers were available to families for 3 years. Our job was to test whether it actually made a difference relative to what provision was normally available to those families. So we structured a randomized trial for about 5,000 families and about 11,000 children, randomly assigned, have to get access to the cash transfer program and have to be in the control group that continued to have access to normal provision. So very briefly, what did we find? Over the 3-year period it was available, families earned approximately $3,000 per year in cash transfers, or almost $9,000 over the 3-year period. Some had much more than that and some had less. But on average, it increased their monthly income relative to the control group by about 22%. So it was substantial. And this led to some substantial reductions in the percent of families falling below the poverty line and the percent falling below a standard of severe poverty, which was reduced by about 41% from the transfers. And there were a number of improvements or reductions, I should say, in material hardships that the families were experiencing related to paying for housing and ensuring that the family had enough food to eat. So in that sense, the program had very positive effects. In terms of outcomes or effects on family behaviors, it had some effects, but left many important outcomes unchanged. In terms of children's school progress, the program had no effects for those who were in elementary or middle school. However, it did have effects for some students in high school who were of high school age. But those positive effects were limited to children who entered high school already being deemed proficient in reading and mathematics, and particularly in reading based on their elementary school, test scores in the 8th grade before they entered. But for that group of more proficient students, the graduation rate from high school increased by about 9.5 percentage points. There were mixed effects in the areas of health, very little effect on formal employment. And based on the early experience where we saw a mix of positive and a lack of effects, we've worked with the city to design a revised version of this program, which we're calling Family Rewards 2.0, and that is now being subject to a test, and we'll have results on those, on that revised approach by sometime late next year. Thank you.